I stood at the back of the room nursing my drink as my brother Thomas basked in the applause at his promotion party. The expensive restaurant buzzed with congratulations while I tried to blend into the wallpaper. Then Thomas spotted me. His smile turned cruel as he walked over. "Get your life together, Julian," he announced loudly. "Wake up. You are becoming a joke to everyone." I just smiled, knowing in 3 hours he would discover whose name was really on his paychecks. As I stood there taking his insults, I wondered how many of you have been judged unfairly by family. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button as I reveal what happened next. My relationship with Thomas had always been complicated. Growing up in our middle-class home in Boston, he was the golden child from day one. 6 years older, Thomas excelled at everything our parents valued. Captain of the football team, straight-A student, homecoming king, and eventually valedictorian. Our parents never missed a single game or academic ceremony. I was different. While Thomas dominated the spotlight, I preferred the quiet of my room where I could read about business innovations and technology trends. My parents saw this as concerning. "Why can you not be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. By high school, the pattern was set. Thomas went to Harvard Business School on scholarship. I got accepted to MIT but dropped out after my sophomore year. The family explosion that followed was nuclear. "You are throwing your life away," my father shouted. "What kind of future will you have?" My mother just cried silently, which hurt even more than the shouting. Thomas, home from school that weekend, delivered the knockout blow. "Some people just do not have what it takes to succeed," he told our parents while I stood in the doorway. Julian has always been the weak link. What they did not know was that I had already sold my first app for $50,000 and was working on something much bigger. I had discovered a market inefficiency in supply chain management software that nobody else had noticed. The existing systems were bloated, expensive, and failed to address the actual problems facing medium-sized companies. I moved into a tiny studio apartment and poured everything into developing my solution. For 18 months, I barely slept. When Thomas graduated with his MBA, I skipped the ceremony because I was finalizing my first round of venture capital funding. My parents called it another disappointment. The funding came through. $8 million to scale my company supply stream. We grew fast, solving real problems that nobody else was addressing. Within 2 years, we had 60 employees and were expanding globally. By year 3, we were generating serious profit. For strategic reasons, I kept my involvement quiet. My legal name was not on any public documentation. Instead, we created a holding company structure that allowed me to operate with some anonymity. This was not about deceiving anyone, but about avoiding the spotlight while we built something substantial. During this time, Thomas got a job at Meridian Enterprises, a mid-sized manufacturing company with decent, but not exceptional prospects. At family gatherings, he would hold court about his corporate conquests, while I said little about my work. My parents beamed with pride at his stories. "When are you going to find a real job, Julian?" my father would ask over Thanksgiving turkey or Christmas ham. "He is still figuring things out," Thomas would answer for me with that condescending smile. Not everyone can handle the corporate world. What none of them knew was that 6 months earlier, SupplyStream had acquired Meridian Enterprises through a subsidiary. Thomas now worked for me, though several layers of corporate structure kept this fact hidden. I had no intention of ever revealing this. The acquisition made perfect business sense, and I saw no reason to complicate things with personal connections. I would evaluate Meridian and its employees, including Thomas, on their merits alone. The first family gathering where Thomas crossed the line from condescension to cruelty happened at my parents' 40th anniversary. Thomas had just received his first promotion at Meridian, and my parents invited their closest friends to celebrate both occasions. To my amazing parents, Thomas toasted champagne glass high, who taught me everything about success and perseverance. They raised one corporate executive and, he paused for effect, looking directly at me, one cautionary tale. The room filled with uncomfortable laughter. My mother looked pained but said nothing. My father chuckled along with everyone else. I let it slide. I had nothing to prove to these people. My company had just broken 100 million in annual revenue, and we were changing how entire industries operated. I did not need their validation. But the pattern continued and intensified. Every family event became an opportunity for Thomas to highlight the contrast between his success and my apparent failure. My parents never defended me. In their eyes, Thomas had followed the proper path, and I had not. In truth, I was working 90-hour weeks, building something I believed in. I had created hundreds of jobs and solved real problems for our clients. But explaining this would have felt like justifying my existence, so I remained quiet. Then came the announcement that Thomas had been promoted to regional director at Meridian. The irony was remarkable. I had personally reviewed the performance metrics for that division just weeks earlier, and while Thomas was not the strongest candidate, his political savviness had clearly paid off. He knew how to take credit and avoid blame, a skill set that carries many mediocre people to the top. The promotion party was scheduled at Vincenzo, one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. Thomas made sure I knew it was $200 per plate. "You might want to start saving now," he texted me. I RSVP'd yes without comment. What Thomas did not know was that I had accelerated plans to restructure Meridian. The parent company, my company, would be sending representatives to formally announce new directions. The timing with his promotion party was coincidental, but perfect. The week before the party, I found myself in an unusual position. As CEO of SupplyStream, I reviewed the final plans for the Meridian restructuring. As Thomas' brother, I received increasingly smug texts about the upcoming celebration. "Dad says you probably cannot afford a new suit for my party," one message read. "I told him you can borrow one of mine, but he says you are too out of shape now." I did not respond. At 32, I was in the best shape of my life thanks to pre-dawn workouts, the only time my schedule allowed for exercise. My wardrobe included bespoke suits that cost more than Thomas' monthly salary, though I rarely wore them, preferring simple, comfortable clothes. 2 days before the party, the executive team gathered to finalize our announcement. The Meridian acquisition had performed well enough, but there was significant inefficiency in middle management. "Regional directors will be evaluated individually," my COO explained. "Some positions may become redundant. Evaluate everyone fairly." I instructed, knowing Thomas' position would be scrutinized. No exceptions for anyone regardless of title or tenure. The night before the party, I barely slept. I had never intended my business success to intersect with family dynamics. Now it seemed inevitable. I considered not attending the party, avoiding the collision altogether. But something in me had reached its limit. 20 years of condescension and criticism had built to this moment. I arrived at Vincenzo 15 minutes late. The private room glowed with warm lighting, white tablecloths pristine under elaborate centerpieces. My parents sat at the main table, my father in his one good suit, my mother wearing the pearl necklace Thomas had given her last Christmas. Thomas held court near the bar, surrounded by colleagues, who laughed too loudly at his jokes. He spotted me and whispered something to the group, triggering another round of laughter. I recognized the regional VP from Meridian, among them a woman named Alicia, who reported directly to the CEO, who reported to me. My mother approached first. "Julian, you came." Her surprise was genuine. "Thomas was sure you would back out." "I would not miss it," I said, accepting her brief hug. My father simply nodded from across the room. We had spoken maybe 50 words to each other in the past year. I found a quiet corner and watched. Thomas worked the room like a politician, all backslaps and broad smiles. Several times I overheard him mention record growth in his division, a claim contradicted by the actual numbers I had reviewed days earlier. Dinner was served, an elaborate 5-course affair with wine pairings. I sat at the far end of the table beside an elderly aunt who kept confusing me with a cousin who lived in Seattle. After the main course, Thomas rose for a speech. He thanked his mentors, colleagues, and especially our parents for showing me what excellence looks like. He did not mention me. As dessert was served, Thomas made his way to my end of the table, champagne in hand. His expression made clear this was not a friendly visit. "Julian," he said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "Did you enjoy the dinner you could never afford on your own?" I smiled politely. "It was delicious. Congratulations on your promotion." His eyes narrowed. "You know I tried to get you an interview in our mailroom last year, but honestly, I do not think you could handle even that much responsibility." Several of his colleagues snickered. My parents watched from across the room, my father impassive, my mother nervously folding her napkin. "Some of us are meant for success." Thomas continued warming to his audience. "Others just drift through life becoming cautionary tales." I remained silent, which only encouraged him. "Get your life together," he said, leaning closer. "Seriously, Julian. You are 32, living like a college dropout. Wake up. You are becoming a joke to everyone." The table had gone silent. Even my confused aunt sensed the tension. "Anything to say for yourself?" Thomas pressed, clearly disappointed by my lack of reaction. Before I could respond, the restaurant manager approached our table. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. The CEO of Meridian Enterprises has just arrived and wishes to make a special announcement." Thomas straightened his tie, assuming this was another opportunity to shine. "That is unexpected," he whispered to a colleague. "Must be about my promotion." The CEO, Sandra Matthews, entered the private room. I had hired her myself 2 years ago. She had no idea about my connection to Thomas. "Thank you all for your patience," Sandra began. "This was meant to be announced next week, but since we have so many team members gathered here tonight, our parent company thought this would be the perfect opportunity." Thomas beamed clearly, assuming this was an additional honor for him. "As you know, Meridian was acquired by SupplyStream Holdings 18 months ago," Sandra continued. "Tonight, the founder and CEO of SupplyStream is here to discuss exciting new directions for our company." Thomas' smile faltered. This was clearly not about him anymore. "Please welcome Julian Parker," Sandra said, gesturing toward me. The room fell absolutely silent. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked to the front. The expressions around me transformed from confusion to shock. Thomas' face drained of color so completely, I momentarily worried about his health. "Thank you, Sandra," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "For those who do not know me, I founded SupplyStream 8 years ago to address critical inefficiencies in how companies manage their resources." My parents stared open-mouthed. My father gripped the edge of the table. 18 months ago, we acquired Meridian because we saw potential for growth through integration with our existing systems. I continued, keeping my tone professional. "That integration begins next week." Thomas remained frozen in place, champagne glass tilted dangerously in his slackened grip. Around him, his colleagues were connecting the dots between the Julian at the microphone and the Julian he had just publicly humiliated. "Regional Director Thomas Parker," I said, finally meeting my brother's eyes directly, "will be instrumental in helping his team navigate these changes." "Thomas, perhaps you would like to say a few words about adaptation in a changing corporate environment." The glass slipped from Thomas' hand and shattered on the floor. The aftermath unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Thomas excused himself immediately, practically running to the restroom. My parents sat immobile, processing the revelation that their supposedly underachieving son owned the company their golden child worked for. Sandra approached me, confusion evident. "Julian, I had no idea Thomas was your brother." "It never seemed relevant to mention," I replied. "We have always kept our professional and personal lives separate." Meanwhile, Thomas' colleagues huddled together, whispering and casting glances my way. The aunt who had confused me with the Seattle cousin now claimed she always knew Julian would do something extraordinary. After giving Thomas 10 minutes to collect himself, I found him outside, sitting alone on a bench in the restaurant garden. He did not look up when I approached. "How long?" he asked, voice barely audible. "How long have I owned Meridian?" 18 months, I answered. "How long have I been building SupplyStream?" 8 years. He finally looked at me, eyes red. "All this time while you were mocking me at every family gathering." Yes, I was building a company valued at just under $1 billion last quarter. Thomas' face flushed. You set me up tonight. You humiliated me in front of everyone. I did not set up anything. Your promotion party coincided with our planned announcement. But I did choose not to warn you. After all these years of pretending to be a failure, he said, anger, replacing shock. You just happened to show up as my boss tonight. That is bullshit, Julian. I never pretended anything, I replied calmly. You and our parents made assumptions. I chose not to correct them. Why? Why keep it secret from your own family? I considered the question carefully. Initially, it was about focusing on the business without distractions. Then, as supply stream grew, I realized something: the family dynamics would never change if I suddenly revealed my success. Dad would find a way to credit your influence. Mom would worry about me working too hard, rather than celebrating the achievement. Thomas looked away. And me? What did you think I would do? Exactly what you are doing now, making it about you. About how I betrayed you, rather than how you belittled me for years. That struck home. Thomas' shoulders sagged. So what happens now? You fire me to complete your revenge. This was never about revenge, I said. Monday morning, the performance reviews for all regional directors will proceed as planned. You will be evaluated on your actual metrics, not our personal history. And if I do not measure up to your standards, then you will face the same consequences as anyone else in your position. No better, no worse. We sat in silence for several minutes. The sounds of the party continued inside, though notably subdued. Does Dad know yet? About supply stream, Thomas finally asked. I assume Mom is telling him now, I replied. His heart can take it. He golfs 3 times a week. That almost got a smile from Thomas. Almost. Inside, our parents were waiting. My mother had been crying, makeup smudged around her eyes. My father stood rigid, his expression unreadable. Julian, my mother began. Why did not you tell us? Would it have changed anything? I asked gently. Would Dad have stopped asking when I was getting a real job? Would Thomas have stopped using me as his favorite punchline? My father cleared his throat. We were concerned about your future. No, I corrected him. You were concerned about my failure to follow a path you recognized. There is a difference. All this time, my mother said, you let us believe you were struggling. I never lied to you, I pointed out. You never actually asked about my business. You assumed it was insignificant because it did not match your expectations. My father shifted uncomfortably. You should have told us. Like you told Grandpa when you changed majors in college, I asked, referencing a family story he had told many times. He never spoke to you again. You were afraid of his judgment just like I was afraid of yours. That landed hard. My father had always used that story to illustrate the generational divide he had overcome. We need time to process this, my mother said, always the peacemaker. It is a lot to take in. As they prepared to leave, Thomas rejoined us, his composure somewhat restored. I guess congratulations are in order, he said stiffly. Thank you, I replied. And congratulations on your promotion. It was earned. This was not entirely true, but burning every bridge served no purpose. The party dissolved quickly after that. Thomas' colleagues made awkward goodbyes, suddenly uncertain of their relationships with both their direct boss and the newly revealed company owner. Sandra pulled me aside before leaving. This complicates things for Monday, she said. The review process proceeds as planned, I confirmed. Thomas gets no special treatment, positive or negative. She nodded. And if his performance does not justify his position, then we handle it professionally with the same severance and transition support we would offer anyone. Driving home that night, I felt strangely hollow. The momentary satisfaction of Thomas' shocked face had faded, replaced by uncertainty about what came next. For years, I had defined myself partially in opposition to my family expectations. Now that dynamic was shattered, leaving questions about who we would all become in its absence. Monday morning arrived with unexpected developments. Thomas was waiting in my office when I arrived at headquarters. Your assistant let me in, he explained. I hope that is okay. I nodded, setting down my laptop. What can I do for you? I reviewed my division performance metrics over the weekend, he said, placing a folder on my desk. I identified several areas where we are underperforming and developed an action plan. I opened the folder. The analysis was surprisingly thorough and self-critical. This is good work, I acknowledged. It is honest work, Thomas replied. Something I have not always prioritized. My division is middle of the pack, not the stellar performer I have claimed. Recognition is the first step toward improvement. Thomas took a deep breath. I would like the chance to actually earn my position. No special treatment, but no predetermined outcome either. That was always the plan, I assured him. And I owe you an apology, he continued. Years of them, actually. I was insecure and took it out on you. Insecure. You were the golden child. Thomas laughed without humor. The golden child with crushing expectations. Do you have any idea what it is like when your peak is at 18 valedictorian football captain, everything coming easy, and then real life hits, and you are just average? Meanwhile, my little brother was quietly building something extraordinary. For the first time, I glimpsed Thomas' reality so different from what I had imagined. We had both been trapped by the same family dynamics, just on opposite sides. We have a lot to figure out, I said, professionally and personally. Thomas nodded. I would like to try. Both. That conversation began a careful reconciliation. The performance review proceeded as planned. Thomas' division showed genuine improvement over the next quarter. Our parents adjusted to the new reality, with varying degrees of success. My father oscillated between belated pride and resentment at being kept in the dark. My mother simply wanted family peace at any cost. 6 months later, Thomas transferred to our international division, a move that was healthier for everyone. The distance allowed our professional identities to develop separately from our personal relationship. We began speaking weekly conversations that started awkwardly but gradually became more genuine. 1 year after the promotion party revelation, Thomas and I met for dinner, just the two of us. We chose a simple restaurant, nothing like Vincenzo, with its pretension and overpriced wine. The Singapore office is exceeding projections, Thomas said, sharing news of his division. The team you helped me assemble is exceptional. Your leadership made the difference, I replied, meaning it. Thomas had discovered actual talents, once freed from the politics of proving himself. Mom asked if we are coming for Thanksgiving, he said, changing subjects. Dad promised no interrogations this year. I smiled. Progress. He is trying, Julian. We all are. After dinner, walking back to our cars, Thomas stopped suddenly. Do you ever think about how differently things might have gone if I had revealed supply stream earlier? Or if you had not spent a decade treating me like a failure? Both, I guess, he admitted. We lost a lot of years to pride and assumptions. But we gained perspective, I replied. I built my company without the safety net of family approval. You are finding your authentic talents, rather than just chasing validation. Still, Thomas said, I wish I had been a better brother earlier. We get to decide what kind of brothers we are going forward, I told him. That matters more than the past. That night, reflecting on our journey, I realized the most valuable thing I had gained was not business success, but the freedom to define myself on my own terms. The approval I had craved for so long meant nothing compared to internal confidence. Family relationships never achieve perfect resolution. My parents still occasionally make comments revealing they see Thomas' path as more legitimate than mine, despite the obvious evidence to the contrary. Thomas and I still hit sensitive spots in conversation, old wounds that require ongoing care. But the honest foundation we now build from makes healing possible. The greatest lesson was not about success or failure, family or business. It was about the courage to live authentically, even when others misunderstand your path. About finding the strength to define success for yourself rather than chasing external validation. And ultimately about the power of forgiveness, not as a gift to others but as freedom for yourself. Have you ever had to forge your own path despite family pressure? How did you handle it when they finally saw your success? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this with someone who might be struggling with family expectations. Remember that true success comes from living authentically, not from meeting others' expectations. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to follow your own unique path, whatever that might be.